Chapter 4. Basis of Coming Social Reorganization. 1. In taking up the subject of social reorganization, we will begin with Hawaii and the situation there. There is a great similarity in the thought of the Hawaiian people and our own, especially when we brought about by experiences. You can take an Hawaiian anywhere in the ocean that you want and you cannot lose him. Never have they gone out in their canoes, but that there was at least one man in each canoe who could tell where they were as though they had the best compass in the world in that canoe. It was the concern of the others to work the boat and his business to pilot it at all times. They have brought this capacity down through the ages with them. 2. At one time we took one of the Hawaiians out into the Atlantic Ocean where he had never been before, and discovered that this sense of direction was bred in him. But we put this man in a boat with sailors who knew nothing of navigation, and he directed them to the Cape Verde Islands hundreds of miles away. The Hawaiians keep quiet and find a solution readily. They use their quality very definitely. 3. The great inventive capacity of the American mind is the functioning of the same sense. The difference lies chiefly in the field into which it is directed. Also, we are all making use of it to a much larger extent than we realize. When we know how we naturally function and then proceed to consciously work in harmony with ourselves, we will make much greater progress in every direction. Did you ever note how you yourself ever often function in certain ways through an inner sense, or hunch, or feeling, and then all the reasons develop afterwards, which show the whys and the wherefores? Many people try to think it all out first. Then they never do anything but think, for there is no apparent solution for anything until after it has been done. The feeling that it can be done, or that it should be done, or it were better so, and so is the first activity of this sense, and if one would be still, the rest of the information would come, completing his whole plan of action. Then the intellectual explanation or the thoughts defining the process would be readily formulated. The reasoning mind, as we commonly know it, only travels over the same grounds it has previously been over, but reason is never complete until this other sense is taken into account. The new social order will come just as the inventor's ideas come. It will be a flash of revelation, so to speak, and then the mind may put it together and carry it out. Man's description for this new order will be complete only as it is in operation. Reason is descriptive, but this other sense sees and goes beyond reason, opening the way for larger reason. 4. This is not a phase of the superconscious as many style it, nor is it a phase of the subconscious. It is the power to penetrate into either. With the Hawaiians, it is a perfectly conscious thing. It is brought about by involution. It is presented to them and is worked out through them. When they used to go on foot around the islands, before they had transportation at all, they were drawn to places where they were needed. I have seen 40 to 50 of them go across the island to find that some of their people were in trouble there. Sometimes their friends across the island would come to them. They never missed in those things. They were in constant touch with each other all the time. I have inquired of them, and they think nothing of it. They simply function that way because they have never been given the impression that it is anything but natural. 5. Were the interest of those on one side of the island wholly within themselves, they would not be concerned about the needs of those on the other side. They are unified through common interests and are concerned with the welfare of those about them, and it is this interest that makes them sensitive to needs outside their own circle or location. Where there is need among their fellows, they draw this sense of need into themselves through the bond of sympathy, which makes them one, and the needs of one group become instantly known by another. Selfishness and self interest separate us, isolate us from the rest of humanity, and the sense of separateness makes people immune to their needs, thus throwing the social structure out of balance. It is in this way that greater and greater needs develop in one group while greater and greater abundance develops in another, and the whole social structure is thrown out of balance. This is where war and strife develop. Can you imagine two groups going to war, each striving to meet the needs of the other? Nature abhors a vacuum, and just as violent storms occur because of the extreme differences in atmospheric pressure, so do wars develop primarily from extremes in human status. 6. The faculty of the Hawaiians is mostly memory going back to former generations. They have never been out of it. There are no barriers put up between them and their former lives. They say it isn't that we have lived in this spot all the time. We see all of these places at all times from one point. We have never been separated from it. It is only necessary to become quiet, and then we know where we want to go. 7. In a sense, this is the same faculty of instinct which the animal uses, but just as the man is much higher form of being than the animal, so are all these faculties comparatively enlarged. In the animal it is instinct, but in man it is very much extended in its capacity. Call it intuition or spiritual discernment, if you will. The animal has it only to extent, but the human goes right through. He can see just what he is going to accomplish. The animal returns over the same ground it has traveled, but the human being can go to any position without going over the same ground. 8. It cannot be accurately determined to what extent this faculty leads the animal into new fields, but we do know that it is the primary function of this faculty that has paved the way for human advancement in every field of human progress. The only difference between men of great achievement and those who remain in mediocrity is that the great pay little attention to what has been done and what obstacles or apparent reasons may stand in the way of achievement, but devote themselves to contemplating what can or ought to be done. Those who allow their mental and emotional natures to recoil, refusing to let the sense reach out into the undiscovered, destroy their own capabilities, and this keeps them always in the prison house of limitation. But it should be noted that prison is only the recoil or reflex of their own nature. Genius is that which goes on through conditions and circumstances and keeps eternally in the process of expansion and extension of achieving power. 9. The ability to use the sense or unlimited progress applies to everyone. It is not for the select individual. It is for all to use. The Hawaiians are far more conscious than any others we know, except the Polynesians. The latter will come to Hawaii on a visit from a distance of 3,000 miles. The true Polynesian and Hawaiian are true Caucasian. It seems that this faculty runs more definitely in the true Caucasian race. If they do not submerge it by doubting its existence or allowing it to stop with apparent limitations, it seems to be greater always. 10. This is what Theodore Roosevelt encountered in Africa. It is evident also in Alaska and Siberia. When I went out in 1905 to take relief to Amundsen, there was no evidence of a trail at all, but when we were within 30 to 40 miles of that village, the villagers came out and met us, told us how many dogs and sleds we had, and generally all about our party and its equipment. 11. One reason the Americans do not possess this faculty is because they have too many accommodations. We have just let it slip by and have not retained it consciously. Subconsciously or unconsciously, the American has this faculty to a great extent. Most Americans have had the experience of it, but hesitate to use it generally or to say anything about it. 12. The average American thinks it's a sign of being a bit off if something is suggested for which there is no apparent reason. Such a feeling is the result of ignorance regarding the true capacity of the individual and the most vital means he has for any degree of achievement. It is his doubt of himself and his ability that holds him back. If ye believe and doubt not, nothing shall be impossible to you, said Jesus. This faculty is the first requisite to sound reason, while the other processes of reason commonly relied upon as the only basis of intelligent reason are secondary. Great achievement had been accomplished from realms beyond reason, and the reasons appeared after. Some reason is brought about by first looking clear to the limitations, catching the vision of the unapparent, yet entirely possible, and then building the other processes of reason as these facts are worked out. To faith add knowledge, say the scriptures, but most of us attempt to attain faith by first knowing all about a thing objectively. 13. Then, too, we let others do our thinking for us. We rely upon them to think everything out, to give it form, and then we rely upon the thing we produce. The producer becomes more and more capable, and the dependent one becomes more and more dependent. Emerson said as much when he referred to the fact that what we gain on one hand we lose on the other. We have watches, but have lost the ability to tell time of day ourselves. To neglect the development of self through dependence upon anything outside yourself is to weaken your own nature. 14. The Chaldean astronomers got their information on astrology through the use of intuitive faculty, or the power of the mind to penetrate through the fact. They would depend on this completely and then work out all theories. These ancient Chaldeans included the workings of this faculty in their history. It has always been in evidence. The influence is still in existence. If we want it, we must become one with it. That is all. 15. This is the eye of the soul, about which the mystics wrote. Through it, men have read and will continue to read the Akashic records. Through it, we may perceive things happening at a distance or envision future events with the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. It comes to us at times during an earthquake or other extremity. Coming events cast their shadows before them. Everything happens first on higher planes, then reflection occurs here. It functions in the Devakan period between consciousness and form. It is the two faces of the gargoyle at the temple gate. Looking one way, it admits limitation of delusion into the temple, man's being. Looking into the realm of spirit, it admits the freedom and the power of illumination. 16. The Hawaiians possess a great natural insight into things, and they prophesy and prognosticate. There is a certain group of Hawaiians who will get together and tune in impending influences. If they perceive an influence that is not of benefit, they turn it over to another group who work against it, and it never manifests. The Hindus say that one man can prophesy and another God-man can stop fulfillment of the prophecy. 17. In our experience with the Hawaiians, we never found an instance where they had failed to stop a negative event that had been prophesied. It is claimed that they have stopped many invasions. The ones performing that duty would lay down a certain line, and the enemy could not cross it. Many times it has been included in their legends. At times the enemy could not even land on their shores. 18. The Carnegie Institute experimented some time ago with a group of Indians in Arizona. This group laid down a certain line and none could cross it except in love. Two men tried to force their way across the line and both men lost their lives. 19. The unillumined made the mistakes of thinking that the prophecy is inevitable, that if a thing is set to happen, it must happen. Whether there be prophecies, they shall fail. Say the scriptures, prophecy comes mostly from the established mental structure immediately surround the earth, being the projection of man's own limited thought. The faculty of perception directed into this field may sense the trend of this mental influence, and that will likely be the outworking in the material plane. This belongs to the realms of false prophecy, and it can be set aside. The scriptures warn against the false prophets, who turn the attentions of the people away from God. True prophecy is the result of keeping the sense directed to the plane of spirit until the individual catches the trend of the universal law. The law of the universe readily sets aside any accumulations to the contrary in the minds of individuals or races. It is accomplished as easy as shadows are dispelled by the light. The sun dispels the light. A single candle will banish darkness from a room. For light, whether small or great, has unlimited power over surrounding darkness, whether it be large or small. Only a little illumination on the part of the individual can dispel any amount of negation, limitation, or false prophecy around him, for they are only vague shadows with no potency within them. Do not accept prophecies of destruction and calamity. Look into the realm of spirit and they vanish. 20. There was a group of persons in the Hawaiian Islands who came there from Japan, bringing black magic with them. They claimed they could spray a person to death, but that group no longer exists. Before one can practice black magic or become an antichrist, he must first become versed in the powers of the Christ consciousness. The outcome of such practice is self destruction, And with the destruction of the individuals given to the practice of the black art, the art passes with them. 21. The most painful, if not the quickest, method of self destruction is the misuse of the spiritual knowledge. The individual tempted to use this spiritual knowledge to influence, control, or gain advantage of others should remember that every edict which goes forth from his own mind or mouth passes through his own being and becomes a fiat of power within his own nature, working upon himself exactly as he had intended it for another. That is what Christ meant when he said that the kingdom of heaven is within you. Your being is a kingdom, subject to the rulership of what you yourself decree. Whether this decree is accepted by another makes little difference to the individual sending it forth. It is received and acted upon within his own kingdom, and he is sure of the most complete results in his own being. The kingdom within the individual will be heavenly only when he sends forth decrees that come from the heavenly realms. The spirit where all things move in harmony to promote the well being and the advancement of every individual on earth. The gift is to the giver and comes back to him, whether it will be good or ill. As you give, so you receive. 22. One denominations of rishis in India is able to perceive an event that is set to happen. If it is the evil, and another group immediately takes it up and it does not happen at all. That was true also of the Hebrew race in the past. They prevented many wars among their people in that way. 23. Many are using the same method to prevent accidents today. Many people never have an accident. We worked with a group of over 700 people in the United States and worked definitely to prevent accidents. And in the 3 and 1.5 years we were with them, there was never an accident in the group. That group has now been augmented until there are about 4,000 members. Today, they work quietly and are not publicly known. 24. Why should not man put on the forces of his being to work in some good purpose? By keeping his perceptive faculty, or whatever else you may wish to name it, working in the spiritual realm where everything moves in harmony toward the complete good of every being. There would be a corresponding action developed in the minds of all people, because they were all working in obedience to the powers that works toward the good of all. They could not possibly say or do anything except that which was for the good of each other. In other words, through obedience to the great law, there could be no conflict among individuals. There could be no wars, no accidents, nor any of the other things that make for misery in the ranks of human nature. 25. The capacity can be put to varied uses. There is the case of the World War veteran De Jong, who was treated in the Letterman Hospital at San Francisco, and who, though blind, demonstrated that he had received the higher illumination by driving a car through the streets of San Francisco and Los Angeles. This particular young man had developed the faculty before, and this was simply his certain awakening. This often happens. 26. The point is that if it can be awakened, as has been proved in so many cases, the faculty is there. If there, it can be understood, rightly directed, and awaken to proper function. We must give attention to these things and proceed intelligently to uncover the latent possibilities within our own natures. If we would arrive at the plane of mastership, no one can do this for us but ourselves. 27. This involves complete emotion control, more practical than mental control. We must be brought to one pointedness. When our forces are centered, it works positively. Jesus said, one pointedness is God. 28. The entire matter of our social organization centers around the deeper perception. People must learn how to develop this faculty. That will be the social reorganization, knowing how to do the right thing at the right time. It will help now to hold the thought of right action always. We will come to the point where we will know that everything we do is the right thing to do at the right time. This is the substance of social functioning in the future. For the teacher, this lesson deals with the motive from which will develop the new social order to come through these changing times, and which will be reverting to man's primal faculty of discerning the spiritual trend of affairs, rather than relying upon the intellectual standards and the material values of the past. Our past experiences have dulled, in a sense, the spiritual faculty, and it must now be resurrected if we are to attune ourselves to the movement of the universal laws. Paragraph 1 and 2 show how the more primitive races, as we call them, have a sense superior in some ways to our own, and show how in some ways they fare better than we fare. Paragraph 3 shows in the field this faculty functions most clearly with us, but it must be explained along spiritual lines if we would make the best of our own possibilities and opportunities. Paragraph 4, 5. This faculty might be variously named, but in mystical science it is what is called the penetrative sense, or the ability to press or lead the mind out into new fields. When directed to its highest purpose, it will lead us into spiritual values just as accurately as it has led us into the fields of inventive genius. Paragraph 6, 7, 8 are self-explanatory, but can be developed further from knowledge of the instructor. Paragraph 9, 10, and 11 afford a good opportunity for showing clearly how the mind of man is clouded through too much concern with the realm of effects, and how it may be clarified by redirection back into the realm of causes. Paragraph 12 should be self-explanatory, but affords plenty of opportunity for enlargement. Paragraph 13 may be handed into the same manner. Paragraph 14 reverts to the same category as paragraph 1 and 2. Paragraph 15 and 16 bring out to some extent the possibilities of this faculty and the fields where it may normally function. More may be said upon what the faculty really is. In its simplest form, it is that phase of the mind that looks back to see what we may have done yesterday or what we hope to do tomorrow. The simple act of attention. If it is toward form, we discover only the complications thereof. But if into spirit, it expands in the realm of spiritual reality. Paragraph 17 brings out some of the possibilities arising from its use. This can be greatly enlarged upon and made of immense value to the student if he will heed the advice therein. Paragraph 18 may be handled in this connection. Paragraph 19, the point to be clearly brought. Paragraph 18 may be handled in this connection. Paragraph 19, the point to be clearly brought out in this paragraph is that prophecy is not accurate when based on mental and physical plane. What is thoroughly organized on the mental plane may transpire in the physical unless set aside by a direct application of spiritual authority. True prophecy is proclaiming the constructive results which follow the authoritative application of discovered spiritual movements. Paragraph 20. The folly of misuse of spiritual power should be self-evident to anyone, but it should be clearly impressed upon the mind of every individual as a measure of self-preservation. The habit developing in many metaphysical circles of mentally influencing others to do the will of another in black magic in its embryonic form can only lead to chaos. Paragraph 21 should be handled in connection with paragraph 20. Paragraph 22 to 23 may be handled as paragraph 19 and may be developed further according to the leading of the instructor. Paragraph 24 is self-explanatory, but affords practical opportunity for showing the basis of true cooperation in ushering in the new order of things. The true motive of the spiritual aspirant is in harmony with the universal motive, which works alike for saint and sinner, rich or poor, bond or free, and in the common motive there cannot be discord and strife. Hence no war. Things equal to the same thing are equal to each other. It's the basis of universal unity. Paragraphs 25 and 26 gives opportunity to impress upon each individual or expressed any so-called unusual powers, but that the same potential power is resident within him, and his business is to develop his own capacity if he would know the measure of his own soul. Paragraph 27. The whole volume might be given on the necessity of self-control. It is as essential to individual power and progress as the organization and application of energy is essential to mechanical power. Without it, there is no practical power to constructive purposes in either field. Paragraph 28 can be amplified according to the ability of the instructor. End of chapter 4.